Hello everyone, very good evening. I hope I'm audible, loud and clear.
Yes, Amir, we can hear you. Good evening. Good evening,
Good
everybody.
evening.
You can start, Amir. When you're ready, you can
Yep,
start.
yes, sure. Thank you everyone. Let me share my screen. So who's going to repeat what no, happened in yesterday's session? Likit, Swara, Sweta. We learned something, right? Yesterday about the cloud fundamentals. Are you interested to highlight the point?
Yeah, we learned about the private cloud, public cloud, and hybrid cloud settings. That
Mm-hmm,
was the last topic,
mm-hmm,
and we learned about what is cloud engineering, cloud computing.
mm-hmm. So what is a cloud computing?
Anything that can be serviced, anything that can be accessed remotely.
Mm-hmm. Via intranet or internet.
Yeah.
We also discussed about cloud service models.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
Okay.
yeah,
Okay, great. And some examples, right? Some real
yeah.
life example. Okay. So now today we are going to talk about on the some advantages, right? So we learn that what exactly the cloud, what the different type of cloud, and now let's understand the actually, okay, the advantages in technical word. So now here you can see, okay, the first benefit, that is the trade capital expense for variable expense. So now yesterday, if you remember, I told you that, right? This if you talk about the cloud, it means capex turn into opex. Now this capital expenses are a funds, right? That a company use to acquire, upgrade, and maintain your physical asset. For example, your property, or let's say your industrial building or equipment. So if you remember the data center example in your traditional computing model, where you need a rack, a stack, and the hardware, and then manage it all. And you must pay for everything in a data center, whether you use it or not. So by contracts, variable expense is an expense that the person who bear the cost and can easily alter or avoid. So instead of investing heavily in a data center and server, before you know how will you use them, you can pay only when you consume a resources and pay only for the amount you consume. So thus you save a money on a technology. It is also enable you to adopt a new application with much space as you need in a minute instead of week or days. Maintenance is also reduced so that you can spend focus more on the core goals of your business. So in data center, it means okay, we need to bear a lot of costs. Until now, I haven't talked about any electricity or the cooling and everything. That is also some additional cost. So massive economic of scale, right? So we'll also get a benefit from massive economic of scale. So by using this cloud computing, we can achieve a lower variable cost than you can get your own, because uses from your hundreds of thousands of customer is aggregated in the cloud, okay, or no, so the provider such as AWS can achieve some higher economic of scale. which translate into lower pay as you go pricing. And now here about the stop guessing capacity. So yesterday we discussed about the e-commerce website, if you remember. Am I correct? Yesterday, if you remember the
Yeah,
e-commerce website,
yeah,
right? So this is what happened to the server, right? In your big billion day, or
big
let's say,
building. Yeah,
and the Black Friday day, right? So we need to eliminate the guessing about your infrastructure capacity need. So when you make a capacity decision before you deploy application, you often either have a expensive idle resources or you need to deal with limited capacity, right? But in the cloud computing, these problems go away. You can access as much as or little as you need and scale up and down whenever you're required with only few minute notice. That's it. So increase speed and agility. So in cloud computing environment, new IT resources are only click away, which means that you reduce in the time, right? So okay, so developers, okay, who required a week time, they can just launch it in a minute, and you found that the result is very dramatic, which also increase agility for organization because the cost and the time that is take to experiment and development are significantly lower. And now here, okay, stop spending money on running and maintaining data center cost. Now you need to focus on project that is differentiate your business instead of focusing on the infrastructure. So now here cloud computing enable you to focus on your own customer instead of heavy lifting of racking, stacking, power the server and go global in a minute. So you can also deploy your application in a multiple AWS region around the world with just a few click. And as a result, you can also provide some low latency and better experience, okay, for your customer with very simply and minimal cost, right? So you always need to remember, okay, these benefit, okay? For example, trade capital expense for a variable expense, massive economic of scale, stop guessing capacity, increase speed and agility, stop spending money on running and maintaining the data center, and go global in a minute, right? So these are some benefits, okay, about the cloud. Now, okay, now we also need to understand because okay, we are in the AWS. AWS is a product, right? So we also need to understand what exactly the Amazon Web Service is. Right? Let's understand it. Okay, before that, I just need a quickly a 2 minute because I forget my water bottle. Folks, I'll just be back in 1 or 2 minutes. Will that fine? I just forgot my water bottle.
Yeah, yes, that's fine. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, let's get started. So now, so till now, we understand some basic information about the cloud. So before, learning more thing about the cloud, also let's understand what exactly Amazon Web Services. What is mean by a web services here? So now in general, right? So when we talk about web services, so what exactly it means? So in general, web services is any piece of software, right? It is just any piece of software that makes itself available over the internet or might be in your private network. So this web service use a standardized format such as a XML or JSON, JavaScript object notation, okay, for the request and the response of an API interaction. So do you know, folks, what exactly the API when we talk about? What exactly this application programming interface? Anyone aware about it? So when we talk about API communication, anyone
The
aware about it?
the thing that connects the two softwares,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
like for example, if we use in a online software, if we take Amazon app, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
if
Mm-hmm.
the gateway which connects the payment method into the Amazon website,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that
Okay.
API.
Okay. Any other folks? What do you think? What exactly the API, application programming interface?
I believe, you hear me? Hello?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I believe in a customer request, for example, trying to get into some uh,
Clear.
website, and then it will try to convert
Sorry, voice
into.
is not clear to me.
Is it better now?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to say like it's when a customer trying to get into the application, as
Mm-hmm.
the computer does not understand
Mm-hmm.
the word language, so it will try to convert into the numbers language, as
Mm-hmm.
in this case, like IP address or port number, and we'll try
Mm-hmm.
to connect to that particular port and go to that interface, and then
Mm-hmm.
reply back to the client or the customer that they're reaching to uh, the application or the website.
Okay. Okay, great. So now, folks, the API, right? So you can say here, you can see there is one client. It's like your laptop, right? And here it's an web services, my AWS. So when we talk about API, it means it is just a set of rules and protocol that allow different software application to communicate with each other, right? It defines how requests and response should be structured. It also, yeah,
Sorry, carry on. Sorry, it's an error.
okay. So it also defines how requests and response should be structured. It also enabling system to exchange the data and functionality without needing to share any internal implementation details. So main thing here, you can see there is a request, right? Here you can see, here you have a request and here you also have a response. So the client send a request to the API and API responds with the data or action result. Okay. I repeat, here you can see there is a client which send a request to the API and the API responds with the data, okay, or action result. So it means whenever you open the AWS console, right, you log in it, you perform any click, there is a always API call. Okay, there is a API call happen from the backend, and then you will get the information. So there is also endpoint API where you have a specific URL where API provide access to the data services. Then, okay, there is a different, okay, let me explain some. Give me a second. So now let me, okay, explain a few information about the API because it is important before we start. So now folks, okay, there are some method. Okay, for example, there is a get method. Then there is a post, then put, all right, then delete. So now whenever I say get, it means it retrieve a data. Okay, remember what exactly get? It means it retrieve the data. Whenever I say the post, it means create new data. Right? Whenever I say put, it means update existing data. And whenever I say delete, it means remove data. Okay. So these are some common method. Okay, about like get, post, put, and delete. So I request to just save this information. Hmm. So now folks, here, okay, as I said that it's always a API call. So whenever, right? So whenever you perform any action on a AWS, it is always the API call. Okay, it's always your API call here. So when we talk about, okay, the AWS, right? So this Amazon Web Service is a secure cloud platform that also offer a set of global cloud-based product. Because these products are delivered over the internet and you have on-demand access to the compute, storage, network, database, and other IT resources that you might need for your projects and the tool to manage them, right? So you can immediately provision and launch AWS resources. So the resources are ready for you to use in a minute and second. So this AWS also offer a flexibility. Your AWS environment can be reconfigured and update on demand, scale up or scale down automatically to meet users pattern, right? So yesterday we discussed about the Uber, right? So whenever you want, you can upgrade it. Whenever you want, you can degrade it as well. Right? This is what I'm trying to say is. Or even though, let's suppose you can also shut down your resources temporarily, or even though permanently as well. And the billing for AWS service become operational expense instead of capital expense. So this AWS service are designed to work together to support virtually any type of application of workloads. Now you need to think of these services like a building block, which you can assemble quickly to build your sophisticated scalable solution and then adjust them whenever you need a changes. right? And here you can see a different categories. So AWS fall under different categories, and each category contain one or more services. So you can select the services that you want from these different categories to build your specific solutions. So let me show you the different categories. This is just an example. Where is my mouse? Okay. So let me access. Let me log into the AWS. Just give me 1 minute. I have some additional protection for my AWS account. Yeah. So folks, here you can see, right? This is, if you click on this KitKat icon here, you will see a list of all categories, whether it is analytics, application integration, blockchain, business application. What exactly these are the different categories, right? So AWS, okay, it's not about just creating or uploading the files folder, or let's say creating some, computing. No, it's more than that. Even though you can create your ambiguity reality, virtual reality, everything that you can create it. Okay, so AWS are completely different categories. They are very broadly categories in different domain based on the functionality. So the main, here you can see the compute, right? So whenever I say compute, it means you have a different services. So under the compute category, you have a image builder, elastic benchtoke, the lambda, lightsail, outpost, EC2. EC2, it means we are creating virtual server in the cloud. AWS lambda, it's a completely serverless computing. ECS, okay, that is container management services. EKS, it means that is managed Kubernetes. AWS Fargate, it means the serverless container. Amazon Light Sales, simplify a cloud server. Then you also have a different categories, let's say storage categories, right? So S3, which is also object based. EBS, also a block storage. EFS, it's just a scalable for a storage. FSX, which is managed file system. AWS backup, it is centralized backup services. Then you also have a different databases as well, right? So these are the categories of the database. There are some managed relational database, Aurora, which is very high performance relational database. DynamoDB, which is also NoSQL key value database. Amazon Redshift, it means it's a data warehouses. Elastic Cache, in-memory caching. So if you click here, okay, or let's say some developer tools, or you will different categories and their service as well. So as I say that, even though even though from this AWS server, you can also create your virtual satellite as well. So remember, AWS is not just about creating virtualization, or let's say creating only the uploading, storage, networking. No, it's more than that. So as you know that we are going to discuss a many services with all practically. Okay, so remember here, so let me show you, okay, one example here. So you can see this is just one very simple example how exactly we can build it. Okay, any network in AWS. So now let's suppose you want to building a database application, right? So let's say your customer might be sending a data to your EC2, that is your Linux machine. Okay, that is, let's say your EC2 virtual machine. So might be it's a Linux machine. Okay, so now this EC2 server also batch the data in a 1 minute, which is an increment to add an object per customer to your storage services. That is Amazon S3 here. That is a S3. So, okay, and you can then use some non-relational database like an DynamoDB, right? So that is a non-relational database. So have you heard about PUBG, everyone? The game, mobile game application, very famous,
Yeah, yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
we do.
right?
Sorry, what do you call the mobile application game?
Yeah. So now what happened? You can see within a 1 second, there are many players connect to their PUBG and play the game. You create a different right? You create a different teams and you can play out. So it means what? This PUBG is very latency sensitive application, right? So there are billions of people are playing together. So you think of that PUBG require a very high or I'm sorry, very low latency, because obviously whenever you click on fire, it should be fire immediately within a fraction of second. So this AWS is also, I mean, this PUBG is also using one of the AWS service, that is DynamoDB. So remember, this DynamoDB provide single digit millisecond latency to the edge user. So it's also a very highly available. So this DynamoDB, it means your key value databases here. I'll explain more. I'm just giving you some small information. So now in this case, you use DynamoDB to power your application, okay? To build some index so that you can find all the project for a given customer that were collected over a certain period. And you might decide to run these services inside one of the VPC. It means what? That's your networking services, right? Now, the purpose of this example is to illustrate that you can select a web service from a different category and you can also use them together to build a solution. So in this specific case, a database application. Okay. So this is just a very simple example. We are going to build, okay, a very complex environment in coming session as well. But I just want to give some information that, okay, how exactly it look like, then here is. So folks, here you can see so which service you choose to use, okay, it depend upon your business code. Okay. So, and obviously the technology requirement. So in the example, you just look the solution made. Okay, folks, can you please mute yourself? Okay. So in this specific example, you just look at the solution made use of EC2 as a compute services. However, that is only one of many compute services that AWS offer. Now here you can see on my screen, there are some other AWS compute which also offer that you might choose to use for the different use cases. So for an example here, okay, EC2, Elastic Compute Cloud. So you want complete control over your AWS computing resources. Then you can also see the Lambda function, right? So you want to run your code, not manage or provision server. What exactly it means? So let's suppose you have some Java program, Python program, and that you want to, right? And for let's suppose you have a Python, you have some, different code, and obviously to execute that code, you need some compute machine. You also require something like, some application, and then you execute it. But now here in a AWS, you just need to run the code directly on the Lambda function and you will get the output so that you can focus on your application instead of your managing the infrastructure. Then we also have a different categories like an Elastic Beanstalk. So you want a service that also deploy, manage, and scale your web application, correct? Then you also have a Amazon Light Sales. So you need a lightweight cloud, platform for a simple web application. So in that case, you can use Amazon Light Sales. Then you also have a AWS batch. You need to run hundreds of thousands of batch workload. Or let's suppose if you need AWS on premises. Yesterday we discussed about PCP, right? That's an cloud, the private cloud platform. So if you want these kind of the platform, or let's suppose if you want AWS on your on-premises, then you need to deploy the AWS Outpost. Other like an AWS Fargate, EKS, ECS. Now what exactly it is, right? So if you want to implement container or a microservice architecture, we'll discuss detail in coming session that what exactly the microservices or what exactly the container. Okay, but just to give the information, if you have some container services or let's upon microservices, which are not depend upon each other, they are completely deployed differently. That is called a microservices. So if you want to use that, you can use Fargate, EKS, ECS, or let's suppose VMware on the cloud, right? So you have on-premises server virtualization platform that you want to migrate to AWS. Then also you can choose VMware on the cloud. So folks, what I'm trying to say is here that AWS provide a different various services. So for an example, here you can see, so now for example, here you can see that only for the compute, right? Only for the compute, AWS have different type of services, whether it is instance, Lambda, Benchtalk, Lightsail, Batch. So it depends upon you how exactly you want to utilize, right? So it is very important to understand when to use what, right? Because as I said that this AWS, it means it's a completely pay as you go services. It's a variable cost to the company. So that's the reason, okay, as become the architecture or the cloud engineer, you are the one who prove the ROI to the company that, okay, I have saved this much of amount while I'm using the AWS. So that's it. It is important to understand when to use what exactly. Any question, folks?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, right? So this one now you just cut out now. You said under two variables, which is capex and opex,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
So under these applications now, we apply the financial analysis in terms of cost cost management, in terms of application of which of these applications will be cost effective for the company, right?
Correct.
So that's what we're going to deploy if we're going to if the company's going to approve to put it on cloud or AWS and those other one, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Just want to
So
be sure.
it's a variable cost to the company, right?
Okay,
So
the variable cost. Okay.
yeah. So AWS or this cloud product is a variable cost because you cannot predict the cost, right? So in AWS, you will get some tool, for an example, the total cost of ownership. We'll discuss in details, but in this total cost of ownership, what happened? You can calculate the estimate value because it's not like that. Okay, you can go with the blindly that, okay, I want to deploy the application. Okay, let's do it on AWS. No, you need to have some budget, right? So every organization, they have a budget for your cloud as well. That, okay, my budget is this, we will have to save this kind of money so that you can utilize the next thing. So the variable cost, it means what here, the, you can launch your, or let's suppose for the testing purpose, or let me, oh no, give one another example. Let's suppose you are the QA testing guy, right? You want to test some application. So if you say in yesterday, right? So here what happened exactly, if you remember my yesterday example, that the moment I'm not working on the project, I can simply turn off the or shut down the my instance, which save the cost. If I degrade it, it means it save the cost. But in case of on-premises, even though if you degrade something, there is no changes in the cost. Whether you use a 10% utilization of your on-premises server or whether you use 100% of utilization of your on-premises server, still there is no change in costs. But in contracts in AWS, it's a completely variable cost to the company. So whenever you deploy your application, you also need to think about the budgeting part. So there, for that, there is a AWS calculator, okay, which you can use it and you will get in, information about, okay, if you are using these kind of the services, resources, then what exactly my cost for the per month to the company. And then you can decide it whether you want to choose which one exactly. Make sense?
Yeah, I would like to know, when you mean the variable cost, is it going to calculate it for monthly or quarterly or
It's on
yearly?
monthly.
Monthly.
So
Okay.
you need to pay the cost monthly. So whatever the service that you consume within a month, you need to pay the charges. Make sense?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So now here, okay, now here you can see it's not like that you can, you have only AWS management console, right? So just now I shown you the AWS management console. From where, okay, from where exactly, okay, I can say, access the AWS directly. AWS management provides some rich graphical interface, GUI. What exactly it is? So that is called a user interface, right? So it means you need to log in it using email ID and password, and you will get management console. That's an UI. So you can also access the AWS, okay, through CLI. When I say CLI, it means command line interface, because obviously you need to run the API calls, different calls. Obviously, you need some access for the command line for the AWS. So the CLI also provide you a suite of utilities that you can launch from your command script in Linux, Mac, Microsoft Windows. So if you are using Windows, you can use command prompt. If you are using Linux or Mac, you can also use terminal, okay, to access AWS using command prompt. And another one that is an SDK, software development kit, right? So AWS also provide a package that also enable accessing AWS in a variety of popular programming language. So this make it easy to AWS in your existing application and sorry, okay, existing application, and it is also enable you to create application that deploy and monitor your complex system entire through the code. So all three options are built on a common REST-like API that serve as a foundation of AWS. Okay, so whenever we provide a command, it run the API. Whenever we run or whenever we click somewhere in AWS, it also run the API, application programming interface. So that's the reason you need to understand that the what exactly the specific API, application program interface. Okay. Do you have any question? Anything till now? Everything is clear?
Yeah, it's clear.
No, no question? No question, folks?
No.
There's a question. So this AWS CPI now, right?
CLI.
DLI
Mm-hmm.
and user interface, which is the graphic user interface.
Mm-hmm.
How do we know the data that should be stored there? Because these are specialized
Mm-hmm.
database areas. Are we
Mm-hmm.
going to look at the nature of the software to now determine we're going to apply this one? Or is it under the broader database of, like you said, under the AWS, you now have these different data sets.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we know the one that, or we'll look at the data set, we'll now know the one that we're going to, deploy for the applications?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so we can use these kind of the different databases. Either you can launch your virtual machine and then you can deploy it, or directly you can use from here directly.
Okay, this AWS, but I thought AWS has its own different. These are oracles and other applications.
These are what?
Under the Oracle, does it have its own AWS?
This
Its
is,
own
sorry,
storage. You said you under the graphical user
mm-hmm.
interface
Mm-hmm.
and the other two applications. Now, and
No.
these are
What I'm
the
trying to say is that there is a way to access AWS. For an example here, I log into the AWS. It means what? I'm using graphical user interface. That is a GUI. If you want to access AWS, you can also access AWS using the command prompt as well. So if I want to
okay.
access my AWS, I don't have a graphical user interface, then I can also use some command and then I can access the AWS services.
Okay, these are basically the different access
Access,
options.
yes,
Okay,
access the services via different method. One
okay,
is a graphical user interface. Second is CLI, that is this command line interface, and other one is you can see that is the SDK, software development kit.
okay, okay. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Just a question, Amir.
Please.
So what's the advantage of accessing through these three platforms, meaning the GUI as well as the command line interface as well as the programming Python, those things. What's the difference, or in what instances we're gonna use those um this one to access the services?
Yeah. So the instance which we are going to access, see, it's not like that these are all the services are available directly, right? So it's not like that you need to deploy the specific services anywhere. For example, just now I shown you RDS, relational database services. So it's not like that, because this yesterday, if you see that this RDS is what? It's a completely platform as a service where you don't need to manage any underlying hardware. So when let's say if I want to MySQL, right, then I can simply choose MySQL, I can configure the MySQL, and then I can directly access my MySQL. So the part that is the managing your hardware, managing the operating system, managing the operating system patch, installing these MySQL, it's not our responsibility. It is AWS responsibility, right? So even though this is the first option, or else you can install MySQL on your EC2 instance. So there are different hardware based on the requirement, which we'll discuss detail while we are on the EC2 topic. Okay. And the second question, okay, that why we required the CLI, right? It's a command line interface. So as I said that these specific tool, you can say, I just say here. So you can say, okay, the specific tool is very powerful tool, which also allow user to interact AWS services through command instead of using AWS management console. So it also provide your automation, efficiency, flexibility whenever you managing the AWS resources. So the main reason of to use AWS CLI is automation and scripting. So you can also allow automation of repetitive tasks using the script. For example, your Bash, PowerShell. It is very useful for a DevOps, your CI/CD pipeline, and your infrastructure management as well. So CLI is faster than navigating to AWS, console. It also enable the batch operation. For example, starting multiple EC2 instance at a single in one. Then you can also manage your AWS resources from anywhere, including your local machine, server, or let's say CI/CD pipelines. No need for any web browser here, right? So this AWS CLI integrated also with your Terraform, Ansible, Jenkins, Kubernetes. So you can use infrastructure as a code flow, right? And let's suppose you can also easily switch between AWS account or let's say any AWS IAM roles. No need to log in out or log in to the AWS console. So these are the just in some best, I can say, the benefit of using the CLI.
Got it. Understood. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is more than that. The
For the
moment
CLI,
we configure, I'll also share you some more information on that.
okay, so you're saying that for the CLI, under the CLI access, you can access it from any location where we are.
Not location. So in AWS, the concept is different. I'm saying you can access all the services, categories of services. Like for an example here, just now I go to my one of the storage. Okay, so this is my storage in a AWS. I go via this UI. Okay, that is graphical user interface. But if I want to see the same information, okay, in command prompt, then here we go. Got it? Bobiora? I
Yeah, I
hope.
can hear you. So you're saying that if we don't want to, you can access it from the graphic user interface or the CPI.
Mm-hmm. So it depends
Oh,
upon the use case, whether you want to whether you want to allow the access to the UI or CLI, depend upon you.
the storage. Okay, 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 okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Any other question, folks?
Quick question, Amaya. What if there are two different accounts and if we have to use them, can we use it the same way? Oh, sorry, Amaya, you're in mute.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Can you repeat?
I mean, what if we have two different accounts
Okay,
for
two
AWS?
different account.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
And you want to manage it,
How do we do it?
yeah, you
Through
can do
CLI.
that. So you can,
Okay.
yeah, I'll show you that. Don't
Okay.
worry. But recently in last reInvent, AWS also provide a multi-session support as well. Okay, so if you want to log into the different AWS account, different user, that is possible. And through CLI also, I'll show that. Means at the moment, I just want to showcase you or give you
Yeah.
some basic
Okay.
information. But to create a CLI, there is a different, I mean to say there is some different process that I'll explain.
Sure.
Yeah. Any other question? So
No,
let's take a break.
thanks.
If there is no question, then everyone, just take a 10 minutes break and then we'll come back. What do you think?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Other folks?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Okay, so let's take a break for the 10 minutes and then we'll come back. Thank you, everyone. Let's take a break. Hello everyone, I'm back. Hello everyone, I'm back.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, hello.
Hello. Yes. Okay. Just give me 1 minute, folks. So, folks, till now we understand, okay, about the different cloud computing concepts. Okay, we also understand about what exactly the AWS, right? Uh, how exactly we can access AWS. Then we also understand the advantages. What exactly the main advantage of AWS, right? So we also understand 6 different benefits of the AWS. And just now we also understand that how exactly you can access AWS. For an example, we can access AWS using the CLI. We can also access AWS using the command prompt. So that also we learn. Now let's see here. Okay, so first of all, so how exactly we can perform the practice, right? Because we need to learn a lot of services, whether it is your EC2 instance, whether your S3, the databases, everything. So for that, I request all the member to create AWS free tier account. So let me explain you what exactly it is. So now folks, okay, if you create your free tier account, right? So if you create your free tier account, so remember it is a free for a 12 months. Okay. And now here you can see there are some services and limitation. So you might have a question that, okay, it's a 1 year free, so everything is free. So answer is no. So it's not like that. Okay, you are using AWS, okay, free tier account for the 1 year. So in 1 year, everything is free. No, there are some limitation to use this free tier product. For an example here, you can see if you are using a virtualization, that is a EC2 instance. Just now we discuss. So for that, okay, it's allow 750 hours per month. Okay, so 750 hours per month is a free. So you can launch any instance. No, again, there is a limitation. So you can launch, okay, these instance which is a free. So what exactly the T2 micro, what exactly the T3 micro, I'll also explain you in upcoming session on the EC2. Just now I shown you the storage part, right? That is an S3, simple storage services, where we can upload the file, share the file, save the file. So for free tier account, okay, it is a 5 GB of free. It means till 5 GB, there is a no any additional charges. And after that, there is a charges. Then databases as well, relational database services. So if you are using MySQL, PostgreSQL, MariaDB, SQL Server, that is also free for the 750 hours. So that's the reason this product don't require any kind of the labs and everything, because everything is available in a free tier account which is available by the AWS only, right? So we need to perform a lot of practicals, right? So for probably from the next week we'll start the practical sessions, different session, from where we'll start with the IAM part. It means creating authentication, authorizations and everything. So I request every member that you can create AWS free tier account. Okay, so I guess it just only deduct $1 from your account, and that is only for validate purpose. That okay, why not whether you are authenticate user or not. So that's the reason we required AWS required to deduct these charges. And after that, even though, okay, so you don't need to worry about it. Okay, what will happen if there is a bill generated, how you can pay? So don't worry about it, even though. So I just say that okay, here is a billing cycle, so every month you need to pay the bill whatever you consume. But okay, we are doing everything under the free tier account, so there is a hardly chances that it generate a bill, right? And and even if it is generated, it is not auto debited, right? It is not auto debited from your account or credit card or debit card. Okay, you need to pay the charges manually. So don't worry about it. Okay, we will have to create account. That is, I can say, a compulsory for this course, because we need to perform a lot of practical session. So this entire class is a completely practical base oriented session. So even though I am a training, but still I hate PPTs. I'll focus more on practical session, because the reason why I'm saying the practical session, because these are the product. We are into the product training. So we must hands on the practical. So what exactly my practice is that? My practice is that, let's suppose I'm on something on the IAM part. I'll explain IAM as well. So let's suppose first I'll explain you what exactly this IAM, what exactly the feature, what exactly the benefit, and what exactly the advantage of the IAM. Then I'll show you how exactly we can create user group roles. And then I'll ask you to perform the same thing here on the session itself. Now the benefit of this that, okay, in case if you face any challenges in the first time, I'm here to help you, so that we can troubleshoot easily. Okay, on the call itself, you can share your screen, we can troubleshoot and you can start practicing as well, right? So the practicing, it means what? Okay, so what I'm expecting from you. So practicing is doesn't mean that okay, whatever happen in the classes, you can just perform the same thing at whenever you have a time. So that is called a repetition. I'm not expecting a repetition from you. I'm expecting you can just try to create scenario, go through some other option, and you can come with the question in the next classes. That's the practice, okay, I'm expecting from you guys, because you are here for the job purpose, right? Not to gain some, only for the knowledge purpose. No, everyone, who join here, they have some motto. So my main focus is to fulfill that motto here. That's the reason I need, everyone has to create the AWS free tier account. So everyone, can you create it before next session?
Ask a question. I just type on my system now. I type AWS free account. There are different options. AWS free account credits, free account charges, free account without credit card, free account with Reddit. So which one is the best option to choose?
Yep. So here you can see, let me show you. You can just here click on free tier account.
Yeah, okay, AWS.
Just click on free tier account and start signing up.
Sorry, free tier, TIER, right?
Correct.
TIER. Okay, okay, I've seen it.
I shared the link already
Okay.
on the chat. You don't need to
Oh,
search it. The link
okay,
is already there.
okay.
Everyone got the link? Can you just check whether it is working or not?
Yeah, it's working for me.
Yeah. So,
Everyone,
okay.
other folks?
Yeah, so I'll create a free account. Okay,
Yeah, so not immediately. Whenever you have a time, you can create it. But the only thing is that, okay, make sure you create an account before we start the next session
okay.
so that
When
we
is the
can
next
start
session?
tomorrow at the same time.
Okay, okay, 7, right? Okay,
Yeah, EST time,
okay,
8 p.m. EST.
okay, okay. Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead. So folks here, right? So we have, okay, we have these are the categories. So you can see these are the KitKat menu. And under that, here you have all the categories, different categories, right? Different categories of AWS. And under that, let's suppose if you choose blockchain, you can see blockchain services. Then if you choose container, then you have a container registry, container services, Kubernetes services, OpenShift. If you choose any development tool, then you also have a different tool, Cloud9, Cloud Shells and everything, Core Commit, Code Build, Code Deploy. So under these category, at least you have a minimum one services. Okay, that is a minimum one services you can find it here. And now let's suppose, you say that, okay, I'm completely new. Then do I need to search that? Let's suppose I want to start the storage services or let's say database. Then do I need to go to the database and then choose this? So no, you can see search the services, right? So in the services, what you need to do is you just need to type the services. Let's say for an example, you want EC2 services. It's here. Let's say you required some networking services. It's here, right? Let's say you need something, AI services. It's here. So you actually don't need to go, okay, in here and then start the service. Instead of that, you can just search any kind of the services here and you can start it here. So even though I'm using the AWS from decade, but still I'm, typing the services here and then start a service. That is more than easy. And here, okay, in the console, the moment you log into the console, right? So here you can see all your recently visited services. So whatever the services that we have, you can also launch it, okay, the recently visited. And the moment you create your account, your free tier account, right? AWS free tier account. So here you can see you are logging to the root account. So when I say a root account, it means what? You have all the privileges of your AWS. You are the main account. But as I said that you are not the only person who is going to access the AWS console. There are many folks in your organization who is going to access the AWS console. So for that, okay, we also need to create IAM user, right? A user who is going to access the AWS. And they might have a different permission. For an example, okay, you are only a database administration. So let's suppose you don't require anything like an EC2 instance or networking or the machine learning. So you need to create a user and assign a appropriate permission so that whenever user log into your AWS console, the user can only see a specific services like an RDS or the networking, etc. So the first part, right, is to create a different user, create a granular permission. So whenever you create AWS account, here you can see account ID. So whenever you create an account, it creates some unique 12-digit account ID. Okay. So now why AWS create a 12-digit account ID? Now this account ID, so whenever you raise any request to the AWS, so based on your account ID, AWS will support team will identify that, okay, what exactly the services you are using, okay, the information about account, they will get it or they will identify using account ID. Now, second benefit is that now let's suppose for an example, um, let's say here, for an example, I'm having an account. This is my account. I'm, launching some virtual machine, and now I want to access, let's say, your AWS console as storage services. It means what? Two different account, two different license wants to have a communication via services. So if you want to create a communication in between two different AWS account, then you require account ID to communicate, right? So that's the reason account ID is required. So the moment you create account, you will get unique account ID here. Here you can see whatever the information that you create while you're creating account, you can also see those informations, okay, in account. Remember, folks, here I'll also explain organizations and everything, but today I just want to focus on some basic information first. So if you see here a service quotas limitation, let me show you. Let's say for an example, cloud computing. Let me view quota. So Ajay just now said that AWS provide in a month, you can launch your virtual machine till 750 hour. So you might thought that, okay, let's launch 75 instance for the practical session, or let's say, let's launch 100 EC2 instance because you have a free, right? 750 hour. So answer is no, you cannot launch it. Because why? Even though you are using the enterprise account or even though you are using trial account, there is a quotas. So it's not like that you can launch hundreds of virtual machine in one go. No, first you need to see what exactly the limitation here. So you can see applied account level quota. So it means I can launch maximum 32 instance in my AWS account. That's the quota which is assigned by the AWS for my AWS account. So remember folks, there is no difference between enterprise AWS account and free tier account. There is no difference in UI, services, everything. Even though you use your AWS free tier account as your main account as well, or your enterprise account, where you can also create your production servers and everything. So there is no difference between free tier and the enterprise account. Now here the quotas. Now why the quota is important? Why the limit? Obviously, AWS designed this quota for specifically for the security features, so that unnecessary no one can create the different resources. Now here, now let's say you are building some application, right? You are building some environment. So you first you need to plan that, okay, for this specific quarter or upcoming quarter, I might require 40 EC2 instance, 40. And might be, no, till the year completed, I might require a 50 EC2 instance that you want to launch at a single time. Because why? Whenever your application grow, you also require some higher compute capacity or some higher resources. So you need to make a plan, accordingly whenever you deploy something. And while you're deploying something, before the first step is that whether you have a valid quotas or not. And if you don't have a quota, sufficient quota, then you can always raise a request. Here you can see request increase at account level. So you can also raise a request from 30 to 85 or 50, something like this, right? So make sure, okay, always you have a sufficient quotas in your environment, right? So that you can't, because in the production environment, it's not like that you stuck on the limitation, right? Now let's suppose if you required some higher compute capacity and you don't have it, it means you're stuck in a bottlenecking situation. To avoid that, make sure that you have a sufficient quota. If not, you can request to increase the quota. So generally, if you have a small request, AWS approve that request automatically here. But let's suppose if I say that, okay, I want 850 instance, right, at a single time that I want to launch. Obviously, AWS will not approve that request. So in that case, what happens? If you really need these much, instance, you need to raise a request to AWS support team, and you just need to mention the business case that, okay, because of this case, I need this much instance capacity. So this is just an example of the EC2 instance. So you in this AWS quota, you will find all services quotas. Make sense about the quotas here, folks? What exactly the service quotas? You understand, folks?
Yeah.
Quota is
Okay,
to
so
get, sorry, the quota you're talking about is to first of all create a plan, right? If
yeah,
data
the
sets
limitation,
become bigger,
maximum limitation for your AWS account.
okay, maximum limitation. That's when we
Yes.
go for the further approval.
Yes, it required
Okay.
approval from the AWS. If you mention 10x, for example, by default it is allowed 32, but if you raise a request for 320, obviously for the security concern, AWS check that, okay, why exactly you required it, whether any malicious activities happen or not. That's the reason AWS check always. So remember, okay, one golden rule that AWS always prefer a deny rules, right? So they always have a policy to deny for a security purpose. I'll explain in details, okay, but to just remember that AWS always prefer a deny rules here.
What's the difference between security architecture and relationship with AWS?
Security architecture, it means what? You're managing the entire security. It's a part of your DevSecOps as well, right? For an example, let's say you want to implement a security. Let's say for you want to block the DOS attack, DDoS attack, ransomware attack. So how exactly you can prevent the attack? For that, you need to create the different architecture. For example, in a security level, you have a different kind of layer security. For example, on a gateway, who is in first level of defense, right? So there you need to implement the web application firewall. You also need to implement a tool who prevent the DOS and DDoS attack. So that's the on the gateway level. And when it comes to the your network layer, you also have a network firewall, or let's say you also have a endpoint solutions where you can apply some rules, right? TCP or UDP or TCP, and then again after that, again in the instance or your machine level, again you have a firewall, again you have an antivirus. It means you need to implement a security in all each layer. That's kind of the architecture about the security. So in AWS also there is a security, right? You required it. It's not like even though if it is in on the cloud, it doesn't mean that all the responsibility is taken care by the AWS. So there is a shared responsibility model where I'm going to explain you about what is AWS responsibility and what exactly the customer responsibility. Make sense?
Yeah, I have a question. Is security architecture under cyber security?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
Or
in cybersecurity
okay,
because
cyber
you will
security.
have to understand the attack first before you secure the product.
Okay.
So for even though for AWS, it required a security architecture or the cybersecurity person for your vulnerabilities, for your attacks, preventions, ransomwares, port scanning attacks, and different things.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. And for that, AWS also provide a special security certification as well. Just to add on your answer, here you can see this is in security specialty. Okay, this is for only security architecture. Okay,
But what about ISACA, Certified Information System Analyst? Is the
so
certification
that is
different?
different. That is
Okay,
different.
from this AWS Security Certified? Okay.
Okay. So folks, if you click on these AWS icon, it always navigate to the your home. I mean to say your console browser directly to the home page of your console. So now the next one is a cost management, right? How AWS charge their customer. Okay, so whether it is always pay as you go services or what. For an example, if I have an application and for that application I required at least 3-year instance. So in that case, obviously, pay as you go services might be not a good option for me. Now, the reason is that I want to launch an instance for the 3-year and I'm giving a commitment to the AWS that I want to use the instance at least for the 3 years. So it means here we are giving a commitment. It means we are expecting some discount. So what exactly the AWS discount policy? So that I'm going to explain tomorrow. So tomorrow session, right? So when we start, uh, tomorrow session is completely based on the cost. So I'm going to explain the cloud economics and billing, how AWS charge it. For example, here, okay, I can see I have it generates some bill, right? And here there is some $1 bill it generated, but how exactly? Why AWS charge for the $1? So that I'm going to explain tomorrow, folks. Make sense, everyone?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
Any question today's session? So first few session, I just want to keep it light. I don't want to give any directly burden. We'll start, AWS slowly. So don't worry about it. Any question for today's session?
Yeah. Are you going to send us the material online so we can on the chat
Yeah, I'm
or
going to
through our
share.
email?
Yeah.
Through
So
our email.
whenever, yeah. So at the moment, I'm not going to share. So what is my practice? So whenever I am into specific topic, I'm going to share a document different, and that is an authorized content of the AWS that I'm going to share because I'm not going to share everything in one go. I'll share it slowly, one by one. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, it's time to wrap up now. Then, if there is no question, we'll meet tomorrow. Let me check with Sudesh. Hey, hi, Sudesh.
Thank you,
Are you there?
Amir. Thank you so much for the wonderful training today. And you all have been a wonderful audience. So we successfully completed our second session of the AWS Cloud Engineering session. So tomorrow will be the third, and Friday will be the fourth, and continue to come to the sessions. And this is one of the hottest career in the job market in US, Canada. So continue to learn from Aya. And if you have any questions, reach out to me. And if you're deciding to go forward, then you can go ahead and register yourself and join the course. Okay. So today's recording will be sent to you tomorrow morning, and we will see you all tomorrow evening. Have yourself a great night, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you,
Good
guys.
night.
Thank
Good
you,
night,
Maya.
everyone.
Bye.
Yeah. Thank you. Good night.